Thursday night, Anne's son Richard said to me, your speech should not contain more than 10,000 words. There was never a problem with that. And also, he said, it shouldn't last for more than 7 minutes. I've never talked to old people for 7 minutes, and I'm not going to start tonight. I first met Rob 25, 30 years ago when he asked me if I'd help raise money for the local preschool. This meant me pushing children around in his garden in a wheelbarrow for 2 hours. This led to trips to Glastonbury in the festival and also the Mendips, where we took high school children to do caving, climbing, abseiling. It was great, and they really enjoyed it. It was the start of our friendship. It was great. Rob always had problems with cars. I can always remember a Citroen. One evening I had a phone call and said, Neil, can you come down and tow me from Moles Court? I said, yeah, fine. So I went down to Moles Court to find this Nissan hut in the middle of a ford surrounded by water. And Anne said on the early diving trips, she never knew what Rob looked like because he always had his head under the bonnet. Unfortunately, Rob's always been very sensible, very organised since I know him, and that's not easy for a speech. But we have been on lots of trips, as he said. And one in particular, a cycling trip. My daughter, I think, was born, and we went to wet the baby's head. And we went across to a pub 10 minutes away, across the forest, had lots of drink, left about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then we suddenly realised Robert had a lot more to drink. First corner, into the ditch, over the handlebars. Next corner, into the ditch, over the handlebars. Took 20 minutes to get there and 2 hours to get home. Another trip across Dartmoor, we're going from south to north. We're stopping in Post Bridge, and we're going to stay in a pub. The pub wasn't open because we got there at 4 o'clock, and it didn't look great. So there's a really nice guest house just down the road. So we rung them up, said, you got accommodation? They said yes. We're a bit wet, a bit muddy, no, that's fine. And so off we went down there, covered in mud, heat, and it was awful. We got to the door, rang the doorbell, the 2 ladies came out and they looked at us and they said, if you're going to stay here tonight, you're going to have to get undressed here. And we did. He's always lived life to the race, Rob. And on one trip in Skye, we were doing the Cooling Ridge. A few of us felt like a day's rest, but no, not Rob. Ambassador's Tooth was begging. And it should have been at least 2 people to rope, but no, Rob, on his own, fingertips, up and over the top. Don't know how he did it. And also, same trip, coming back off of Skye, huge puddles of water, about 30 foot down. Rob strips off, straight in. Could have been 2 foot of water, could have been 20 foot of water, and he still did it. 5 minutes later, so did his son, another idiot in the making. It's no wonder Louise now lives in Spain. In the early years before I knew Rob, I have this on good authority, he used to love swimming, and there was the Lilo in Guildford. And on a stag night, I believe it was Collins, they broke into it in the middle of the night in October, November. Rob dived into the Lilo, only to find it had been emptied for the winter. That probably accounts for his good looks. Also in Castle Street Pool, Rob used to apparently love to climb up onto the roof, onto the rafters, and dive into the water. So that's him on the edge. Some Scottish trips, fantastic, always wet, always windy. One I wasn't on, which I'm very disappointed in, Rob was sharing a tent with Nigel. They like this. They'd had lots to drink.
Nigel remembers it well.
They had lots to drink. As I say, wet and windy. Rob woke up in the middle of the night apparently, needed a pee. Too wet, too windy. So Rob, being Rob, got an old wine box, took the inside out, started to have a pee. What he didn't realise there was a hole in the bottom. And Nigel's sleeping there, tent got very, very wet. I wish I'd been there. Anyway, Nigel got his own back. A few years later, we were in France going across the glacier, all roped up together, nice and tight, 5, 10 metres as we should have been. And then 20 yards behind us is Nigel, wandering around, just looking at anything he could, trying to eat a Mars bar so we couldn't see him. I was behind Rob, and all of a sudden he disappeared, down into a crevasse. I called out, we all jumped down, crampons in, ice axe in, rope tight, actually stopped him hitting the bottom. After a few minutes, which seemed like hours, this arm and this ice axe appeared, and he's trying to get into the snow to pull himself out, inches away from the rope. I'm behind him, so I'm saying, Rob, ice axe to the right, ice axe to the right. And there's another chap, John Legg, at the front saying, no, Rob, ice axe to the left. I don't know, he did his rope, but anyway, he got out, obviously, very, very safe. In the evening, we sat down and we were talking about it over a few drinks, and we were just wondering whether we'd done the right thing. We thought we probably had. And Rob thanked us all for it, and some of you might not appreciate this, but I said to him, do you know, Rob, I never knew a gear loop could hold so much weight. And he still doesn't know to this day whether I was joking or not. You have to be a climber to know that. It would not be right for me to finish this speech without saying about Rob's achievements. I mean, London to Brighton in 7 hours. Some people can't even cycle it. Most people couldn't certainly do it, having eaten pilchards, broccoli and flat coat for 6 months training. London Marathon in 6 mile flats, that was 2 hours 36 minutes, and he represented Great Britain in the triathlon championships. He would probably say his greatest achievement recently was to get Anne drunk enough to say she'd marry him. And I've been told that Anne can drink, and even drink more. Anyway, she said yes. And this morning in Ringwood, we were in the registry office, and the registrar looked at Anne and said, Anne, do you take Robert to be your lawful wedded husband? She said, I do. She turned to Rob, she looked at Rob, she looked back at Anne, she said, Anne, I'm going to ask you one more time. She still said yes. So I don't have a glass, but I would ask you all to join me in raising your glasses and give a toast to the bride and groom.